हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
कृषि संस्कृति जनमंगलम कृषिकार यश आयुर्बलम
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
दक्षिण गाथा गुर्जरी गिरिकुंजवन सृष्टि भरी दक्षिण गाथा गुर्जरी गिरिकुंजवन सृष्टि भरी भूमि स्नेह शीतल साक्षरी भूमि स्नेह शीतल साक्षरी सागर सुमन सरिता भरी
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
संझाण उदवाड़ा स्मृति जरथोष्ट्र आतश संस्कृति उपराट तीर्थल आहवा और डांग डुम्मस वेड़छी
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
मुंशी मिठू मोरारजी दादा रतन कल्याण जी कंडेल डांगी खारवा हलपति अनाविल पारसी
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं
दांडी नमक सत्याग्रही गांधी गिरा गरुड़ेश्वरी दांडी नमक सत्याग्रही गांधी गिरा गरुड़ेश्वरी सरदार सरोवर नर्मदा सरदार सरोवर नर्मदा है कंकरा सब
हे समस्त रिद्धि कृषिमूलं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं धन धान्य औषधि संपन्नं धन धनधान्य औषधि सम्पदम्
You are now unmuted. You are now muted. You are now unmuted. You are now muted. You are now unmuted. You are now muted.
Slide में
You are now unmuted.
So good morning friends, good morning dear participants. I welcome to all of you, myself Dr. Lalit Modi, co-organizing secretary of this NIU webinar series along with Dr. Deepak Suthar, organizing secretary of this NIU webinar series. I welcome to all in this 18th webinar of NIU webinar series 2020. I welcome to all once again. I also welcome our today's speaker Dr. Sivraj K. Jala in this for giving for joining with us for delivering a beautiful webinar on beautiful topic. So before starting the webinar, we have a message from our Dean Dr. V.B. Kharadi sir, Principal and Dean College of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry, Navsari Agriculture University, Navsari. So I request Dr. Kharadi sir, please.
You are now muted.
Good morning to all. I hope you all are safe and well at your place in this COVID-19 situation. We all know that due to the coronavirus, we all are under the lockdown period, which has affected the education of the students. But to mitigate this issue, Navsari Agriculture University, Navsari has developed e-class facility for the students under the guidance of Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Sunil Chaudhary. And I am happy to announce that all the teachers of veterinary college used this facility and completed the remaining curriculum during the lockdown period and also successfully completed the online examinations. In addition to this, our teachers, Dr. Deepak Suthar and Dr. Lalit Modi, also started Vet NIU Webinar Series 2020 on the various topics on clinical aspects for the benefit of undergraduate and postgraduate students, field veterinarians, as well as the teachers. I appreciate that the efforts are made by Dr. Suthar and Dr. Modi to use this critical COVID-19 period very efficiently to improve the knowledge of the students and veterinarian working in the field through the digital platform provided by the IT department of the university. The Vet NIU Webnet is not only useful for the Gujarat students and veterinarians, but also almost useful globally as per the participant registered in various webinars. I congratulate Dr. Suthar and Dr. Modi for the success of the WET NAV webinar series 2020 and wish them the best of the luck for the future endeavor. Thank you.
You are now unmuted.
Thank you, sir, for your blessings and provide all the necessary help for the betterment of this webinar series. Thank you. So now time for the webinar. Before starting the webinar, I would like to introduce Dr. Sivraj K. Jala. Dr. S. K. Jala graduated from Anand Veterinary College in the year 2006 and he did his master's in veterinary surgery and radiology with specialization in veterinary ophthalmology. He also did his PhD from same university and worked on laparoscopic ear surgery for the first time in India. He joined NIU in the year 2010 and have 10 years of teaching and research experience. Dr. Jala has very good knowledge about ophthalmology, about cataract surgery. So I request Dr. Jala to please start the webinar. Dr. Sivraj Jala, please.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit
You are now
Modi.
muted. You are now unmuted.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am Dr. S.K. Jala, and I welcome all of you in my webinar on diagnosis and management of ocular affections in animals. As we know that ophthalmology is a branch of surgery and medicine. And when I started working in the field of ophthalmology, that is in the year 2006, at that time it was in a very infancy stage and very few institutes are doing work on the ophthalmology. And right now in 2020, almost majority of all institutes are having full-fledged ophthalmology unit and they are working well in the this particular field. And besides institutions, few private practitioners are also doing very tremendous job in the field of ophthalmology. So with this short introduction, we'll begin our webinar. The topics to be covered in this webinar are basic information about the anatomy of eye, the ocular examination procedure, and management of ocular affections in animals. So let us begin with the anatomy of the eye. The eye is basically composed of three tunics, that is fibrous tunic, vascular tunic, and nervous tunics besides its adnexal structures. The fibrous tunic is composed of cornea and sclera, whereas iris, ciliary body, and choroid forms the vascular tunic. And the nervous tunic is made up of the retina and the optic disc. Now, if you look into the cross section of the eye, you can see the anterior most structure. This anterior most structure is a cornea. It is the most powerful refractive surface of the eye and it is usually clear and transparent. Next to the cornea is an aqueous humor or anterior chamber, and this anterior chamber is filled with the aqueous humor. After anterior chamber, the colored structure is present that is called as iris, and the aperture of the iris is known as pupil. And just posterior to the pupil, a spherical structure is present which is known as lens. It is the second most powerful refractive surface and it helps in accommodation. Just posterior to the iris and anterior to the lens, a tiny cavity is there which is filled with the aqueous humor. It is known as posterior chamber. And just posterior to the lens, a big hollow structure is present which is filled with the vitreous humor and it is known as posterior segment of the eye. And at the end of the posterior segment of the eye, there is presence of the retina on which the light is focused and the image is visualized. Now the ophthalmic examination. The ophthalmic examination combined with history and signalment provides the foundation for obtaining an accurate diagnosis. And it is usually achieved by a combination of basic knowledge, mastering of simple instrumentation and critical observation. Now the instrumentation which is required for a normal ophthalmic examination are torch, dark room, fluorescence staining strip, Siemens tear test strip, tonometer and magnifying lens. If you are having this much instrumentation, you will be able to diagnose majority of the ocular conditions in animal. The eye should be examined in a specialized order so that we cannot miss any tiny luke fault in this particular examination procedure. So the order in which eye to be examined is signal. First is you have to collect the signalment and history, then perform gross examination of the eye. Then you have to evaluate different neuro-ophthalmological reflexes, perform serous tear test to rule out the tear production. Then fluorescence staining is being done to bring the ulceration or abrasion in view. Then you have to perform tonometry to measure the intraocular pressure. And after tonometry, you have to dilate the pupil. And after dilatation of the pupil, you can examine the fundus and retina with the help of ophthalmoscope or fundoscope. Even you can perform ultrasonography to examine the entire segment of the eye, and electroretinography to know the functioning of the retina. Now history. The importance of an accurate history, accurate and thorough history, it cannot be overemphasized. In addition to good ophthalmic history, a general medical history is also essential. So where the first thing you have to ask the owner regarding what symptoms does the patient is presented with. Does the patient is having any impaired vision? If the patient is having impaired vision or vision loss, whether this vision loss is either unilateral or bilateral, whether day vision is affected or night vision is affected, whether there is presence of any discharge from the eye. If there is discharge, then you have to ask about the type and consistency of the discharge, whether there is presence of any pain, redness of the eye, or any discoloration of the eye. And the important thing is whether the patient is recovered from any major disease or is still under therapy for any particular disease condition. This history gives you some of the important information regarding ocular systemic disease in which some of the ocular clinical signs are visible. Then you have to perform the gross examination of the eye. The gross examination to begin the gross examination, it is necessary that eye should be properly cleaned. If there is presence of any discharge, then you have to collect this discharge for antibiotic and sensitivity testing. And the gross examination, it is performed with minimal restraint, and the part you can examine in gross examination are eyelids, third eyelid, globe as a whole, cornea, pupil and iris, and lens. So let us see one by one which conditions you have to observe. In this particular condition, you have to gross examination, you have to observe the conformational abnormality of these all organs. In eyelid, you have to note the thickness of the lid and the position of the lid in relation to the globe, whether there is any inward deviation of the eyelid or out deviation of the eyelid is seen. The condition of the margin is observed, whether it is swollen, ulcerated or crusted, whether there is presence of the neoplasm, ability to open or close the eyelid, and the size of the opening of the lid. The lacrimal drainage system is also evaluated to check whether there is any blockade in the nasolacrimal system. Then you can examine for the presence of misdirected row of the cilia. So these are certain conditions in which you can see the outward deviation of the eyelid, that is ectropion, inrolling of the eyelid, that is known as entropion, inflammatory enlargement of the meibomian gland known as chalazion, the ectopic eyeless abnormality, that is ectopic cilium, and the distichiasis and the dermoid. The third eyelid. The third eyelid is to be examined under topical anesthesia, and whenever you are suspecting for any presence of growth or foreign body inside the eye, at that time you have to examine. And for examination of the third eyelid, you have to grasp the superior boundary with the help of thumb forceps, and then you have to pull it up and outward side for examination of the inner lymphoid structure, and you can pull it in a straight up direction to see the external surface and the conjunctival cul-de-sac. Palpebral conjunctiva. Palpebral conjunctiva is also examined whenever you are suspecting for the presence of foreign body. For examination of the conjunctiva of the lower eyelid, with the help of one hand you have to press the globe, and the second hand is placed at the margin of in the center of the margin of the lid, and then you have to gently press it downward so that you can clearly examine the lower palpebral conjunctiva. However, the visualization of upper palpebral conjunctiva is little bit difficult, but you can examine by holding this particular eyelid. Hello. Holding the eyelid with the help, you have to grasp the lid from the center, and then you have to gently pull it away from the globe, and you can examine the inner surface of the palpebral conjunctiva. Next you have to view is eyeball. In eyeball the main thing you have to observe is position of the globe, whether it is abnormally protruded out, that is known as exophthalmos, or there is inward recessiveness of the globe, that is known as anophthalmos, and you have to compare the mobility as compared to the normal companion eye. Then the presence of nystagmus, that is rapid eyeball movement, you have to observe. Deviation of the eye, that is strabismus, or any presence of periorbital swelling, it must be noted. Then you have to evaluate is the cornea. The cornea is usually clear and transparent, and the cornea should be inspected for the presence of any dullness, opacities, vascularization, foreign body or growth, any pigmentation, ulceration that we will see in our further management of different conditions. The next you have to examine is anterior chamber. The anterior chamber can be examined by direct illumination and lateral illumination. Mainly it is to be examined under lateral illumination for measuring the depth of the anterior chamber, whether it is normal, shallow or increased. The depth of the anterior chamber becomes shallow in case of glaucoma, and the aqueous humor, it should be usually clear. Whenever then if there is presence of any pus or blood, then consider it as an abnormality, that is hypopyon or hyphema. The iris. Iris should be examined by both it is to direct and lateral illumination, and observe for change in the color, smoothness and texture of the iris, whether it is steady or tremulous during movement of the eyeball, that is iridodenesis. Now again you have to observe is for adhesion of the iris, either with the cornea or the lens. Adhesion of iris with cornea is anterior synechia, and with lens it is known as posterior synechia. Now the pupil. Pupil is the aperture of the iris, and it should be examined for its size, shape and position as compared to the normal contralateral eye. And the main thing you have to observe is reaction of the pupil to the stimuli, the light stimuli. Whenever you throw a bright light in the eye of an animal, there is constriction of the pupil, and in case of dark, the pupil becomes dilated. The both pupils should be in the equal size under the same light condition. Lens is mainly examined for lenticular opacities and uveal pigment deposition. And for examination of the lens, it is necessary that pupil should be fully dilated. So this is about the gross examination of the eye. Now we will discuss about the various neuro-ophthalmological reflexes. This neuro-ophthalmological reflexes gives us idea about whether the animal is having a vision, but it is not a 100% sure short test. Suppose if these particular responses are negative, the animal is functionally blind. We cannot say. So first reflex is pupillary light reflex. In pupillary light reflex, you have to throw a bright light in the eye of an animal, and if the animal is having positive pupillary light reflex, then the pupil becomes constricted, and if the animal is having negative pupillary light reflex, that means the pupil remains dilated. The next is Menas response. In Menas response, you have to make a sudden hand gesturing movement in front of the eye of animal, and in positive response, the animal blinks. But here you should take current that there should not be any air current. Hence, you have to place a glass or anything in between the patient and your hand so that there should not be any air current. The next response you have to observe is the fourth Purkinje reflex. Whenever you throw a bright light in the eye of an animal, the fourth Purkinje reflex is visible opposite to your bright light. That is the response from the posterior capsule of the lens. And this fourth Purkinje reflex is helpful in differentiation of mature and immature cataract. The next reflex you have to observe is the nasal blink reflex. This nasal blink reflex is also known as avoidance reflex. Whenever we throw a light in the eye of an animal, the animal usually try to avoid by a movement of its head, or animal blinks immediately. That is called as nasal blink reflex. Then next is the corneal reflex. The corneal reflex is to be assessed to check the sensitivity of the cornea. And to check the corneal reflex, you have to attach the whisk. You have to just put a whisk of cotton over the cornea and give a slight movement. If the positive corneal reflex is there, the animal blinks. Then the tapetal reflex. The tapetal reflex is mainly from the tapetum lucidum, and it is a green color reflex which is seen in bright light. This tapetal reflex is also used to differentiate between mature and immature cataract. In mature cataract, the tapetal reflex is absent. The next test you have to perform is, after gross examination, you have to perform a Sirmas tear test. Before cleaning and irrigation procedure, we must perform Sirmas tear test. Otherwise, it gives you a false positive or false negative result. The Sirmas tear test, it gives you an idea about the production of the aqueous portion of the precorneal tear film and basal tearing reflex. In this, for performing Sirmas tear test, you require a Sirmas tear test strip, which is nothing but a Whatman filter paper number 41, which is graduated. And you have to place this Whatman Sirmas tear test strip into the lower conjunctival cul-de-sac and wait for 1 minute. In case of normal dog, the Sirmas tear test value ranges from the 15 to 20 millimeter per minute. The next test you have to perform is fluorescence staining test. This dye, fluorescent dye, it is absorbed by, retained by the stroma, whereas it is not retained by the epithelium. So whenever there is, in case of corneal ulceration, there is loss of epithelium, at that time the stroma is exposed and that stroma retains the dye. A normal fluorescent staining strips are available in the market. So you have to dip this strip into the sterile water and just touch the tip of this particular fluorescent stain with the bulbar conjunctiva, and under normal circumstances, and then you have to examine the eye under copper light. In normal, if the epithelium is present, the particular cornea does not take the positive fluorescent stain, and if the animal is having ulceration, that particular ulcer appears green. It gives you a greenish tinge. Then after that, the intraocular pressure of the eye is to be measured, and for measurement of intraocular pressure, you have to topically desensitize the cornea by instillation of 1% proparacaine eye drops. Then you can measure the intraocular pressure with the help of Seward's tonometer. That is also a type of indentation tonometry, in which you have to lift the head of the animal and then you have to place the tonometer directly over the central portion of the cornea. Another advanced matter, applanation tonometry, that is called as tonopen wet. In this, you have to just touch the tonopen over the eye of the animal and it gives you a digital reading about the intraocular pressure. Normal intraocular pressure in dogs range from 14 to 20 millimeter of mercury. Then after measurement of intraocular pressure, you have to examine the fundus or posterior segment of the eye. For that, you have to dilate the pupil, and the agents which are used for dilatation of pupil are 1% tropicamide or 1% atropine ointment can be used. The tropicamide can dilate the eye within 15 to 20 minutes and it lasts for about 2 to 3 hours. And then you have to examine the eye with the help of either direct or indirect ophthalmoscope. The basic difference between direct and indirect ophthalmoscope is a lens is placed in between the examiner and the patient. In case of, hence we can consider that indirect ophthalmoscopy is safer, as there is a distance between the patient and the examiner. Whereas in case of direct ophthalmoscopy, the examiner has to go very close to the eye of an animal, so there are chances of bite by the animal. Similarly, in case of direct ophthalmoscopy, you have a narrow field of visualization, whereas in case of indirect ophthalmoscopy, you have a wide field of visualization. In case of direct ophthalmoscopy, an upright image is visible, whereas in case of indirect ophthalmoscopy, an inverted image is visible. So what you have to observe on indirect ophthalmoscopy or fundoscopy? In this, you have to examine the fundus. Fundus means a end portion of any organ. So this fundus is composed of, in this fundus, the bright green area, it is known as tapetal fundus, and it is made up of the tapetal lucidum. And the black color area, it is known as non-tapetal fundus, or it is also known as tapetum nigrum. And at the junction of tapetal and non-tapetal fundus, there is presence of a optic disc. In different animal, the fundus looks different, but in case of canine, the optic disc is triangular in shape with presence of 3 to 4 major arterioles and 10 to 15 venules are present. So this is a fundoscopic image. This is the indirect ophthalmoscopic image I have taken with the help of a camera. See, in this you can see the bright hyperreflective tapetal layer, tapetal fundus, and the non-tapetal fundus is black in color. And at the junction of tapetal and non-tapetal fundus, there is a circular optic disc. But here you can see there is no blood vessels are seen in the central portion of the optic disc. So it is a case of the progressive retinal atrophy. Then next is ultrasonography. In ultrasonography, you can use the higher frequency transducer, that is 12 megahertz, 18 megahertz. Transducers are best suited for examination of the eye. In ultrasonography, you can examine the anterior chamber, iris, lens, vitreous, and retina. So this is a normal ultrasonogram of the eye, in which you can clearly see the cornea, the anterior chamber. Here it is iris, and the lens, circular structure, it is lens, and this anechoic structure, it is a vitreous humor, posterior segment, and then a small, this hyperechoic structure, it is mainly a part of the retina. This is a appearance of the aphakic eye. After cataract surgery, we did a ultrasonogram, and in this you can see only presence of the posterior lens capsule. This is a photograph of the mature cataract, in which you can see the hyperechoic structure that indicates a cortical mature cataract. Then in case vitreous is generally anechoic, but this hypoechoic structure indicates degeneration in the vitreous. Then asteroid hyalosis on ultrasonography. This is a case of the bilateral retinal detachment, in which you can see in one eye it is having a partial detachment of the retina with subluxation of the lens, and in another eye you can see the complete detachment of the retina. This particular is a typical ultrasonographic feature, that is a seagull's wing sign for the diagnosis of the retinal detachment. So this is all about the basic information of how you have to perform the ophthalmic examination procedure. Now we will discuss about the ocular affections and its management, one by one and segment by segment. So first we will discuss about the eyelid affections. The most common eyelid affection you find is an entropion. The entropion is an inward rolling or inrolling of the margin of the eyelid. Now what happens, upper eyelid is most commonly affected than the lower eyelid. In case of entropion, whenever there is inward rolling of the eyelid, the eyelaces which is present on the external surface of at the end of margin of the eyelid that rubs against the cornea, and there it produces the corneal irritation. And whenever there is irritation to the cornea, it shows a symptoms like epiphora, opacification. If it remains untreated, it may lead to development of vascularization and ulceration. And if still it remains untreated, it may lead to perforation of the eye. If there is 45-degree tilt, it is called as mild entropion. If it is having 90-degree tilt, it is called as moderate entropion. And 180-degree tilt is called as severe entropion. Suppose if animal is having mild to moderate entropion, in this case you can just apply 2 to 3 staples at the margin of the eyelid, and the entropion is corrected. But for severe entropion, you require surgery. That is a hot Celsus technique. In hot Celsus technique, you have to give an elliptical incision just 2 to 3 millimeter below the margin of the lid, and you have to remove the island of the skin. And after removing the island of the skin, you can take a simple interrupted sutures. But here, while taking a simple interrupted sutures, you have to take care that the node should be on the lower side. So this is a case of entropion in a dog, in which it was presented with, you can see here the third eyelid is protruded. The animal was having a severe epiphora, and here you can see the eyelid margin is inwardly rotated. So we have decided to operate the lid. The aseptic preparation of the surgical site was done, and surgery was performed under general anesthesia. Then an elliptical incision was made by holding the skin fold. This is appearance of the wound after removal of the skin fold. And then a series of simple interrupted sutures were applied by keeping the knot on the lowermost side. And post-operatively bandage was applied. And in this case, we have prescribed the topical antibiotic, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, and along with systemic analgesics to reduce the pain. So this is the pre-operative and 30th post-operative day photograph, in which you can see here the lid margin is everted, whereas in case of post-operative photograph, this particular lid margin, it becomes near normal. Then arrow-headed procedure for lateral entropion. In some of the case, this is a photograph of the entropion at the lateral canthus, in which you can see the eye, this particular eyelashes are rubbing against the cornea. So in this case, after aseptic preparation of the surgical site, we have given an arrow-headed incision, and after giving an arrow-headed incision, the particular fold of the skin is removed. And after removal of the fold of the skin, similarly the simple interrupted sutures were applied. And this is the pre-operative and post 30th day post-operative photograph of the lateral entropion. Now next condition is ectropion. On the contrary to the entropion, ectropion is outrolling of the eyelid. So whenever there is outrolling of the eyelid, it exposes the sensitive inner lining of the bulbar conjunctiva and the sclera to the atmosphere. And there it leads to the dry, it also increases the tear evaporation, and that leads to drying of the eye, and which in turn lead to keratoconjunctivitis sicca. The entropions are of 3 types: conformational entropion, cicatricial entropion, or senile ectropion. And this is a photograph of the ectropion, in which you can see a V-shaped notch is present on the ventral surface of the eyelid, exposing the bulbar conjunctiva and the sclera. So for management of ectropion, you have to perform or go for either Wharton-Jones technique or VY blepharoplasty, in which you have to give a V-shape incision below the margin of the lid, and then followed by removal of the island of the skin, and then you have to suture this particular wound in Y-shape pattern, that is known as VY blepharoplasty. Then we will discuss about the conditions of the cilia. In first photograph, you can see the normal eyelids with cilium in there is no any abnormality. But second photograph is more two or more rows of the cilia, that is distichiasis, and abnormally misdirected row of cilia, that is trichiasis. And ectopic cilium means the cilia is emerging from the bulbar its normal meibomian gland, and it emerges out from the palpebral conjunctiva and it irritates the cornea. In any disorder of the cilia, it irritates the cornea and there it produces the corneal changes. So this is a photograph of the distichiasis, means two rows of the cilia. This is a photograph of the ectopic cilium, in which you can see a small tiny hair follicle is present at the palpebral conjunctiva. The treatment for disorders of the cilia are epilation with the forceps. You have to remove the excessive or misdirected row of the cilia, but it generally tends to regrow within 3 to 4 weeks. So to avoid this, either you can go for cryoepilation or electroepilation, in which cryoepilation you can use nitrous oxide, or electroepilation a tiny electrode is used to destroy the base of the cilium. But these all techniques are having its own disadvantages. And if there is presence of ectopic cilium, so in that case you can go for either eyelid splitting or wedge resection techniques for correction of this particular condition. Now the third eyelid. Third eyelid is actually a cartilaginous extension of the bulbar conjunctiva, and the most common affection of the third eyelid is cherry eye. This cherry eye is a protrusion of the third eyelid, and it is usually most commonly seen in the Napoleon Mastiff and Beagle breed of dog. So for removal of this cherry eye, varieties of techniques are used, and in every technique has its own advantages and disadvantages. What we were doing previously is, we have under general anesthesia, you have to just lift the cherry eye, and then you have to excise this particular gland or protruded portion with the help of BP blade, and then you can just apply a electric current, or electrocautery is used to control the hemorrhage. In another technique, after lifting of the cherry eye, you have to apply a series of horizontal mattress suture at the base of the cherry eye, and then you can transect this particular growth or protruded gland over the suture lines. But here in this both the technique, whenever you are applying a suture, the suture should be applied on the external surface, otherwise it causes irritation to the cornea. And whenever you are removing this cherry eye or third eyelid, so it generally affects the tear production. So it is not advisable to remove this cherry eye. So rather than this, you have to perform the Morgan's pocket technique. In this Morgan's pocket technique, 2 elliptical incisions are given at the base of the particular cherry eye, and then the separation of the conjunctiva, particular bulbar conjunctiva of the edges is to be done, and this conjunctiva is superimposed over the affected cherry eye, and then you have to take a suture so that this particular gland goes inside of the particular sac. And the advantages of this particular technique is you are preserving the third eyelid, this third eyelid and gland, and hence the tear production is not affected. But whenever you are completely removed or transected the cherry eye, in that case it is advisable to give lifelong artificial tear replacer. But I recommended to go for the Morgan's pocket technique. Another condition is growth in the third eyelid. It is usually commonly present in case of equines and buffalo. This is a photograph of a squamous cell carcinoma and of the third eyelid in the buffalo. So in this case, you have to lift the growth and then apply a series of horizontal mattress suture at the base, and you can transect the growth. It is a photograph of a squamous cell carcinoma in case of equine. You can see the particular growth is lifted with the help of a forceps, and then transected with the help of BP blade, and the electrocauterization was done with the help of ophthalmic electrocautery. This is a post-operative appearance of after application of after cauterization of the mass. Even you can take a series of simple continuous suture, but the particular thread, it should be buried inside the wound. It should be, you have to take care. Post-operatively, in this case, you can give artificial tear replacer, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and systemic NSAID to control the pain. See, this is yet another case of a neoplasm, in which by external appearance it seems to be a neoplasm, or ocular neoplasm, or growth or the orbital cavity. But whenever you evert this particular growth, then you can see it is only attached with the third eyelid or the palpebral conjunctiva. It involves the palpebral conjunctiva, and this is the appearance. This is the appearance of the eye after removal of the growth. You can see there is severe chemosis, the conjunctival edema is present, which however is subsided within 2 to 3 days by subconjunctival injection of antibiotic and steroid combination. Now the affections of the eyeball. The most common affection of eyeball is proptosis, and it is usually seen in the brachycephalic breeds. These brachycephalic breeds are having a narrow orbital cavity, and whenever any mishandling is done, or if you have applied the neck collar tightly, or during fighting, there it leads to an proptosis of the globe. This particular proptosis, it is considered as an emergency, because whenever and to preserve the vision, you have to immediately anesthetize the patient. After anesthetizing the patient, you try to put this particular globe back into the orbital cavity. If the animal is having positive pupillary light reflex or a nasal blink reflex is positive, then and then you can try for putting the globe back into the orbital cavity. If these reflexes are negative, then it is better advisable to go for enucleation or evisceration of the eyeball. But if the vision is preserved, so in this case, under general anesthesia, it should be performed under general anesthesia, and you have to place the globe back into the orbital cavity and then perform temporary tarsography for 10 to 15 days. The swelling is gradually reduced on its own. So another condition is eye injury, particularly in case of dogs. It is present while fighting in street dogs. This is also another case of the eye injury, in which you can see complete removal of the globe. Another case of eye injury. In case of goat, there is an eye injury. In case of buffalo, the eye injury is present. This is also a case of eye injury in a buffalo. So whenever the animal is presented with eye injury, either you have to go for evisceration or enucleation and exenteration procedure. So now what is the difference between evisceration, enucleation and exenteration? In evisceration, you have to remove the cornea, and after removal of cornea, you have to squeeze the globe so that the content of the eyeball is removed, and then you can close the scleral wound. Then you can close the scleral wound. In case of enucleation, the entire globe along with third eyelid, conjunctiva and eyelids are removed, whereas in case of exenteration, the globe along with orbital contents and eyelids are removed. So this is a case of an eye injury, in which you can see the particular protrusion of the globe, and it is to be managed by evisceration, in which a clear corneal incision was given, the cornea was removed, and the contents of the eyeball was squeezed. So this is the appearance of the eyeball after squeezing the orbital contents. And then the scleral wound was sutured using absorbable suture material. And after suturing the scleral wound, a temporary tarsography was performed for 10 to 12 days. Post-operatively, in this case, you can give systemic antibiotics and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. This is a video of a exenteration procedure, in which, because of the severe damage to the eye, we have performed the exenteration procedure, in which first step is suturing of the eyelid. After suturing of the eyelid, you have to give an elliptical incision at the base of the lid margin. So you have to give a elliptical incision, and after giving elliptical incision, once the eyelids are separated, then you have to transect 4 dorsal, ventral, medial and lateral rectus muscle, so that it leads to the pulling of the globe outside the orbital cavity. And then you have to apply a tight suture at the base of the globe to prevent the hemorrhage. After application of the suture, you can transect the globe with the help of BP blade, and this is the transaction of the globe. After removal of the globe, again, suppose if small hemorrhage is present, you have to control with the help of application of a suture. This is the removal of the content of the globe. After ligation of the blood vessels, you have to suture the eyelids. This is suturing of the eyelid. So whenever you are performing a suturing of the eyelid, your small space is kept open at the medial canthus for regular dressing of the eyelid. So this is again a case of the orbital wound in which the entire globe is removed, but this particular wound is kept open. So we have after fastening of the edges of the wound, the skin wound was closed with a simple interrupted suture using non-absorbable suture material, and a gauze piece is placed inside the orbital cavity for regular dressing. This is the appearance of eye after completion of the surgery. The next is the condition or surgical affections of the conjunctiva. The conjunctiva is actually a mobile mucous membrane that covers the inner surface of the lid and third eyelid, and it is also present over the globe. The conjunctiva which is adhere with the eyelid, it is known as palpebral conjunctiva, and the conjunctiva which is present attached with the episclera of the globe, it is known as bulbar conjunctiva, and the junction between the palpebral and bulbar conjunctiva is known as conjunctival cul-de-sac. The main condition of conjunctiva is chemosis. It is known as edema of the bulbar conjunctiva, which is mainly because of the chronic irritation from the foreign body or injury. Here in this photograph, you can see there is bright red color structure. Conjunctiva is edematous. So in this case, you have to give for subconjunctival injection of gentamicin and dexamethasone for 2 to 3 days. This is the second post-operative day photograph. Again, the particular case didn't come for follow-up. Another condition is dermoid, conjunctival dermoid. Dermoid is a misplaced embryonic tissue. It is either present over the cornea or conjunctiva or cornea, and it covers both cornea and conjunctiva. Whenever it is present over the conjunctiva, under general anesthesia, you can transect the particular growth and then apply a cauterization to control the hemorrhage. Post-operatively, you have to check for whether the if there is presence of any ulceration or not. If no ulceration is there, then you can go for topical instillation of antibiotic and steroid eye drops. If ulcerations are present, then you have to manage it accordingly. Then the next important structure is cornea. As we know that cornea is the most powerful refractive surface, and if there is any irritation or injury to the cornea is there, so that there may be an inflammatory response that has led to the hampering of the vision. That means the light rays cannot pass beyond the cornea, and then the image is not visible. Histologically, the cornea is having 5 distinct layers. The outermost layer is known as precorneal tear film, and then the next layer is epithelium. This epithelium is usually hydrophobic in nature, and just beneath the epithelium, the next layer is stroma. This stroma is made up of is hydrophilic in nature, and it comprises about 90% of the corneal thickness. Then next to the stroma is an elastic membrane that is known as Descemet's membrane. It is elastic in nature, and after Descemet's membrane, the next layer is endothelium. This endothelium, once it gets damaged, it is having minimum regenerative capacity. The reaction of cornea to various diseases, first is edema, that is bluish discoloration of the eye. It generally happens whenever there is any injury to the endothelium of the cornea. The first and foremost response is vascularization of the cornea. If the superficial vascularization, whenever the corneal vessels, if it is coming from the limbus, it is called as superficial vascularization. And whenever the corneal this particular vascularization, if it arises from the deeper structure, then it is called as deep vascularization. Then there is fibrosis of the cornea, pigmentation in response to any irritation, that is known as melanosis of the cornea, stromal infiltration with white blood cells, any accumulation of abnormal substance within the cornea, And finally, the melting or malacia, stromal malacia. The scars, according to its size and density, corneal opacity is mainly classified into nebula, macula, mild opacity, moderate opacity, and leukoma, that is a severe opacification. See, in case of corneal, whenever there is a severe corneal edema, so at that time the iris is not visible. The corneal ulcers. Corneal ulcers is defined as an corneal epithelial defect with underlying stromal loss or inflammation. The etiology behind development of ulcer is either it is having any uh, uh, conformational abnormality, trauma, or because of the keratoconjunctivitis, Zika, and in case of feline herpes virus and equine herpes virus infection also leads to the development of corneal ulceration. So corneal ulcers are broadly classified based on its duration and depth. On the basis of duration, it is classified as simple ulcer and complicated ulcer. If that particular ulcer gets reepithelialized within 7 days, it is termed as simple ulcer. If it takes more than 7 days, it is termed as complicated ulcers. And the simple ulcer is usually reepithelialized without involvement of the stroma, whereas complicated ulcer, it involves stroma for healing. So based on duration, depth of the ulcer, it is classified as superficial corneal ulcer. In superficial corneal ulcer, only a layer of the epithelium is lost. You can see the superficial corneal ulcer. In deep corneal ulcer, a portion of there is a trench in the eye. You can see the deep vascularization and corneal opacity, along with a you can see centrally a hole is present in the ulcer. This is also a stromal ulcer in equine, in which there is involvement of the 90 to 80 to 90% of the stroma. Once this particular stroma is lost, there is protrusion of the Descemet's membrane. And the peculiarity of Descemet's membrane, that it appears black in color. And whenever you perform fluorescence staining test, the Descemet's membrane is also hydrophobic in nature, hence it does not take the positive fluorescent stain. In this picture, you can see the surrounding area is green in color, whereas the central portion is black without staining. So it is a case of the descemetocele. In this also, you can see the superficial vascularization and opacification of the cornea. Once the iris, once there is rupture of the cornea because of negligence by the owner, then it leads to the prolapse of the iris. So here in this is the photograph of the case in which direct illumination and lateral illumination reveal the complete prolapse of the iris. In this lateral illumination, you can see the depth of the aqueous humor is already gone, leaked, and there is a contact between synechia is also there with deep vascularization. Indolent ulcer. The indolent ulcers are the ulcer which does not have a tendency to heal. It is usually because of the loosely attachment of the epithelium over the stromal tissue. You can do anything, but that ulcer does not show a tendency to heal. That is why it is called as indolent ulcers. Now the clinical signs of corneal ulceration. The typical clinical sign of corneal ulceration is blepharospasm, epiphora, and photophobia, anterior uveitis, miosis, aqueous flare, or there is presence of the serous or purulent ocular discharge. For diagnosis, first is you have to rule out the underlying cause of the ulcer. Then you have to assess the sensitivity of cornea by touching it with visc of cotton, that is corneal reflex. Then you can go for fluorescence staining test to bring the ulceration in the view. But this fluorescence staining, other than fluorescent, you can use Lizamine green or rose bengal stain for staining of the cornea. This rose bengal and gives you an immediate idea about the abrasion of the corneal abrasion. That is, however, not visible sometimes with the fluorescent stain. Now the main is medical management of the corneal ulcer. In medical management of the corneal ulcer, the best treatment is autologous serum. Suppose if the animal is having a simple ulcer, you can give autologous serum, antibiotics. If you suspect for keratoconjunctivitis, Zika, then in that case you can give artificial tear replacers. Mydriatic like atropine, it should be given for deep corneal ulcers and descemetocele. But whenever you are using atropine as a mydriatic in equine corneal ulcer, at that time you should take care. Whenever the pupil becomes fully dilated, that means the atropine has entered into the circulation, and there are chances that it may produce colic in the equines. And besides this, you can give systemic antibiotic and NSAIDs in case of deep corneal ulcers and desmetocele. This is about the medical management. And if required, this is a photograph of the superficial corneal ulcer, in which you can see the centrally stained corneal ulcer surrounded by a opacification, which on 10th postoperative day with application of antibiotic and autologous serum, you can see the ulcer is totally healed and it is only a white scar is present. On 15th postoperative day, you can see the intensity of the particular scar is reduced. Now the surgical management. In case of deep ulcers and desmatoceles, either you can go for temporary tarsorrhapy, third eyelid flap technique, conjunctival grafting, or amniotic membrane transplant, or fibrin glues are also available for sealing of the ulcer. So in temporary tarsorrhapy, you can just close the eyelid by applying a suture over the external surface of the lid, and you have to keep some places for topical instillation of the eye drops. So this is again a case of the desmetocele on the day of presentation, in which you can see the centrally red color structure along with the opacification of the cornea, and the deep vascularization is present. In this case, we perform third eyelid flap technique, and this is on 7th post-operative day, in which you can see the inflammation is quietly reduced. This is on 15th post-operative day, where the complete clearing of the cornea is there, but the central fibrotic portion is present, and you can see the iris is adhere with the wound, and it is a case of the anterior synechia. This is after 30 days, in which you can see a small scar is present at the particular site of ulceration or desmetocele. This is positive for desmetocele, in which we perform again a case of desmetocele in which did third eyelid flap technique. So in third eyelid flap technique, what you have to do is you have to just cover the entire eye with the help of third eyelid. So this is the appearance of the granular tissue on 15th post-operative day, and this is after recovery on almost about 2.5 months. If the ulceration is, if the animal is having indolent ulcer, then you can go for either punctate or grid keratectomy. So for performing punctate and grid keratectomy, first is you have to clean the eye with the help of earbud, and after clearing the eye with the help of earbud, you can use 26 gauge needle to produce a to create a grid keratectomy for indolent ulcer. In this case, you have to just apply make a sticks with the help of 26 gauge needle over the ulcerative bed, as well as some healthy portion of the cornea should also be covered. And the next is conjunctival graft for management of the desmetocele or iris prolapse. The two cases of iris prolapse we have managed by desmetocele. And this is the video. You can see the video. First is another case, a suturing of the particular graft over the cornea. This is after application of the graft. This is a second eye, in which you can see the prolapse of the eyelid. Here we perform the conjunctival grafting. The bulbar conjunctiva is separated, and then the protruded portion of the iris is trimmed, and then after forming the anterior chamber, a graft is applied directly over the external surface, particular surface, and this is the post-operative appearance. Another condition is pigmentary keratitis. Pigmentary keratitis is either endogenous or exogenous in origin. Breeds such as pugs, dachshund respond to the corneal inflammation with pigmentation more than other breeds. Superficial corneal pigment migration of the it is because of the migration of the limbal melanocytes along with blood vessels, and epithelial pigment may arise from the stem cell stimulation at the limbus. So underlying causes are keratoconjunctivitis sicca may lead to the pigmentary keratitis. Then long-term irritation caused by misdirected hairs is the another cause etiology for development of corneal pigmentation. The facial fold that rubs against the cornea, especially in case of pug and Pekingese breed, is the most common cause of this development of pigmentary keratitis. Usually, this pigmentary keratitis, it begins with the medial canthus. It begins with the medial canthus because the hairs or the facial fold, it rubs against the cornea. There it produces the inflammation, and that leads to the development of the pigmentation, which slowly over a period of time it covers the entire cornea, and it makes the animal functionally blind. So treatment of this condition is, the first step is you remove the mechanical cause. There, suppose if medial entropion is there, you can correct the medial entropion. In case of facial folds that are causing irritation, it is better advisable to remove the facial folds. Electroepilation for misdirected hairs. Topically, you can use 0.02% tacrolimus solution or ointment, and 1% pimecolimus is also used. Even you can use 1%, 2%, 3% cyclosporin compounded in the corn oil. Even commercial cyclosporin ointments are also available. And along with this, you have to use the eye lubricants, that is artificial tear replacer. And if you are not removing the primary cause, then you have to continue this cyclosporin and eye lubricants throughout the life of an animal. So this is a case of the corneal melanosis. You can see particularly it develops at the lateral canthus, and this is after a long-standing treatment, that is more than 1.5 year photograph. Now we will see the affections of the lens. Why first affection is cataract. So why I have kept this beautiful picture of a waterfall? Because the word cataract, it is derived from the Greek word katarodactys, and that means a waterfall. So cataract is defined as a focal or diffuse opacity of the crystalline lens and its capsule. Now this is the basic anatomy of the lens, in which you can see the zonules of the xenes that holds the lens, the anterior and posterior lens capsule, the epithelium of the lens, which is present beneath only anterior capsule, and the posterior lens capsule is devoid of the epithelial, and central portion of the lens, it is made up of the cortex, and the fibers which are originating from the cortex, it migrates towards the periphery, and at the equator it unites with each other. The function of the lens is to provide the accommodation. For distance vision, it requires thickening of the lens, and for near vision, it requires thickening of the lens, whereas for distance vision, it requires thinning of the lens. And most animals, domestic animals, have poor accommodation. The accommodation power of lens is measured in diopter, and in case of any dogs, the particular accommodation power is 2 to 3 diopters. Now the classification of cataract. Cataracts are broadly classified on the basis of age of animal at onset, stage of maturation, and location within the lens. Age of animal at onset, it helps in determining the cataract's cause. Either it is a congenital cataract, that means present at the time of birth, juvenile or developmental cataract, that is present in animals less than 6 years of age, or senile cataract, which is present in animals more than 6 years of age. Location within the lens gives you an idea about the particular part of the lens which gets opacified. Either it is a capsule, subcapsular, that means beneath the capsule, cortex, that is cortical cataract, nucleus, if it affects, it is nuclear cataract, and if it is present at the equator or polar, that is known as polar cataract. The most important for our point of view is stage of maturation. This refers to the appearance of lens regardless of the age of the animal or the underlying problem causing cataract. Not all the cataract progress through each stage of maturation, but this stage of maturation, it has been considered important when determining whether a dog is a candidate for surgery or not. So in this, first is an incipient cataract. In incipient cataract, it is also termed as nuclear sclerosis, in which less than 15% of the lens gets opacified. The next is mature cataract. In mature cataract, very early lenticular changes are there, and it involves so this I think it is writing is different, but in immature cataract, you can see that 10 to 99% of the lens may be affected, but in here the tapetal reflex is usually present through some portion of the lens. The vision may be impaired to a variable extent, but as the cataract progresses towards the maturity, the animal becomes blind. The mature cataract. In mature cataract, there is total or solid opacification of the lens, and the tapetal reflex is absent, and the animal is functionally blind. But there are chances that animal may have a peripheral vision. In intuition cataract, the lens is markedly increased in the hypermature cataract. Whenever there is a cataract, after maturity, whenever it increases in the size with the by imbibing the fluid from the fluid, it leads to increase in the size, and that leads to rupture of the lens fibers, and the Y suture is clearly visible. In Morganian cataract, there is complete liquefaction of the cortex occurs, and the nucleus sinks at the bottom of the lens capsule. The cataract etiology for cataract are, it is either genetic, diabetes, trauma, or it may occur secondary to other disease like progressive retinal atrophy or uveitis can also cause the cataract, electric shock and radiation. The clinical signs are there is appearance of bluish, gray or white color changes in the lens. The animal is having tendency to bump into the things, and it is reluctant to use, stare or jump onto the objects, and it shows hesitancy in unfamiliar environment. There is presence of inflammation or redness of the eye, and pain in squinting may also be present because of any underlying causes. The diagnosis is mainly based on history and clinical sign. You can go for ophthalmic examination to evaluate the functioning of retina. You can go for pupillary light response, Menas response. Even you can perform ultrasonography and electroretinography. The basic thing is you have to differentiate between the corneal opacity and cataract. So how will you differentiate between corneal opacity and cataract? See, in case of cataract, the iris is clearly visible and the opacification of lens is seen behind the iris. Whereas in case of corneal opacity, due to opacification of the cornea, you cannot visualize the iris. So whenever this iris is not visible, it is considered as a case of the particular problem related to the cornea. And if iris is visible and opacification is seen behind the iris, then you can consider it as for the cataract. The treatment of the cataract, it is to be managed either by intracapsular cataract extraction, extracapsular cataract extraction, or phacoemulsification technique. Intracapsular cataract extractions are now, it was used in early 60s, and nowadays it is used only for removal of the luxated and subluxated lens, whereas extracapsular cataract extraction technique and phacoemulsification techniques are used for management of the cataract extraction. The steps is you have to position the patient in lateral recumbency, and the snout of the animal is kept little bit elevated. Then you have to perform lateral canthotomy for enlargement of the visual field. Then you have to hold the superior rectus muscle with the help of suture, and a tunnel is constructed with the help of BP blade number 15 or 11 number blade. And then you can perform can opener capsulotomy or continuous curvilinear capsulorhexis for removal of the anterior lens capsule after staining it with a methylene blue dye. Then you have to enlarge the corneal incision, and you can either hydrodissect the wound or you can use the muscle hook and Vectis to remove the this particular cataractous lens. After that, you have to go for aspiration of the cortical material from the capsular bag. This is the appearance of eye after aspiration of cortex. You can see immediately you will observe the tapetal reflex. And this is the photograph of implantation of PMMA, polymethyl matte acrylate lens. It is non-foldable lens. And then you have to suture the cornea using 10-0 absorbable suture material. This is eye after completion of operation. However, in this photograph, the intraocular lens, it is being placed in the anterior chamber, which however it should be placed in a posterior capsular bag. This is the removed cataractous lens. Post-operatively, you can give corticosteroids, antibiotic, mydriatic, systemic corticosteroids, and antibiotics are also given, and Elizabeth collar is to be prescribed. This is a photograph of the cataract in a fold, in both bilateral cataract in a fold. This is ultrasonogram of cataract, and also the particular cataract was managed by the extracapsular cataract surgery in both eyes. This is appearance of eye after performing a cataract surgery. The phacoemulsification is currently the choice of cataract extraction, because in phacoemulsification you have to give a small size incision as compared to 180-degree long incision in case of extracapsular cataract surgery. And the principle of phaco is to sculpt and fragment the nucleus, and subsequently you can remove the fragmented lens by aspiration, and aspirates the remaining cortical material. So these are the steps of phacoemulsification, that is creation of first is making a hole with the help of keratome, and then you have to perform a capsular axis, then a side port entry is made, and this is the trenching procedure in which you have to defragment the lens with the help of a phaco tube. And this is after this is a procedure of aspiration of the cortical material. This is the appearance of eye after removal of the cortical material. You can see the tapetal reflex, even the light is visible. And this is the photograph after placement of foldable intraocular lens into the posterior capsular bag. Another condition is luxation or subluxation of the lens. Whenever there is partial or complete breakdown of the zonular attachment happens, it results into the displacement of the lens. If the lens remains in the patellar fossa, it is considered as subluxated. But if the lens moves either into the anterior chamber or vitreous, it is called as luxated lens. So this is a diagrammatic presentation of luxated lens and vitreous synerchis. This is also a case of the luxated lens. Here it is a photographic present. This is a case of the posterior luxation of the lens into the vitreous. In case of cat, this is a dog and it is a cat in which the it is extracted with the help of cryo extraction assembly. So for that again a enlargement of the corneal bone. Then you can see the drying of lens before application. As the lens is luxated, the particular whenever you open the anterior chamber, there is along with aqueous humor the vitreous also comes out, so you have to wipe the vitreous, and then a cryo probe is applied over the lens, and after freezing the luxated lens was removed. Once you remove the lens, the vitreous which is coming out, it should be cut with the help of a scissor, that is vitrectomy. Then the wound was sutured using 10-0 absorbable suture material. This is 15th post-operative day, in which you can see opacification is still there, but you can visualize the tapetal reflex in the animal. This is on 30th post-operative day, in which you can see the eye is completely cleared with dilated pupil, and the particular reflex is visible, and the animal is showing positive response to the flashlight. So there are still so many conditions are there, but due to constraints of the time, I have incorporated this much condition, and I am highly thankful to my guide of that is Dr. D.B. Patil, Dr. P.V. Parikh, Dr. Kilawala, during who helped and encouraged me for performing to do my best in learning of the during my learning curve in the ophthalmology. And I am also thankful to Dr. Madhvi Seth. She is a vitreoretinal surgeon in Baroda, who helps us during our early phase of development of the ophthalmology wing, and she helped me a lot, and with her I learned a lot from Dr. Madhvi Madam. So thank you very much.
You are now unmuted.
Thank you, Dr. Sivraj Jala, for a very nice, informative presentation. So now we will start our question and answer session. All the participants, I request to you, if you have any doubt or question, please write down in chat box only. One question from Dr. Madhuri. What is the procedure of using autologous serum, dose and frequency of application?
See, for autologous serum, you have to collect the blood from the particular that animal, and you have to separate the serum. After separation of serum, you can store that serum in the refrigeration at for 1 week time. And for topical instillation, you can use 1 drop or 2 drop of autologous serum twice or thrice in a day.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, I have one question. it is not easy to diagnose this various ocular lesion or disease condition in animals in earlier cases with a naked eye. So, is there any special instrument required for the diagnosis of this eye condition?
See, for diagnosis of any ocular condition, the basic instrumentation you required is a bright light, and materials which you required is Schirmer's tear test strip, fluorescence staining test strip, and if you have a magnifying lens, which is generally used in this indirect ophthalmoscopy, you can diagnose the almost 80 to 90% of the conditions by using this much instrumentation only. There is no specialized instrumentation are required.
Okay. Thank you, sir. One more question from Dr. Jignesh Parmar. Medical management for cataract. Can you give idea of medical management of cataract?
So far, I have, as far as my knowledge is concerned, the only medical management is you have to give systemic, topically steroidal or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory to prevent the secondary uveitis because of the leakage of the lens protein material. You have to control it. Otherwise, it is better you go for surgical removal of the cataract.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Dr. Muskan. What is use of contact lens and how to use?
Contact lenses are mainly used in case of corneal ulcers, but the use of these contact lenses are it is done in human practice. They are using contact lenses. Even veterinary, they have also many authors also reported the use of contact lenses. But I am not having that much exposure about the particular use, how to use the contact lenses in animals. So rather than using contact lenses, I prefer to go for third ideal flap or conjunctival grafting for management of the ulceration.
Thank you, sir. One question from Dr. Surbi. She want to know the size of suture material for scleral suturing after evisceration.
You can use 3-0 or 4-0 vicryl for suturing of the sclera.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Dr. Madhuri. Can we mix gentamicin and dexamethasone in a single syringe?
Yes, we can mix gentamicin and dexamethasone in a single syringe, and you can take 0.5 ml of gentamicin, 0.5 ml of dexamethasone, and that 1 ml solution you have to inject in superior and inferior bulbar conjunctiva for management of chemosis.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from again Dr. Muskan. Please explain Purkinje reflex.
Purkinje reflex, it is a actually see, whenever we throw a light in the eye of an animal, the first layer that comes is the cornea, that is the reflective layer. Second layer is aqueous humor. Third is this particular anterior capsule of the lens, and the next is posterior capsule of the lens. So these Purkinje images are mainly from the posterior portion or capsule of the lens. In Purkinje reflexes, it is seen opposite to the particular bright light. In two images are visible, and that is observed opposite to each other. That is called as Purkinje reflexes or Purkinje images.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Dr. Jignesh Parmar. We want to know the initial management of glaucoma.
If the initially for management of glaucoma, you can use parasympathomimetic, that is either 1, 2 or 4% pilocarpine solution is used. Even you can use 0.12% prostaglandins, that is lantanoprost, or beta adrenergic blockers like timolol maleate, brimodidine tartrate is also used. And if the intraocular pressure is more than 30 millimeter of mercury or 50 millimeter of mercury, so in that case you can use intravenous mannitol. Even you can give orally dorzolamide, acetazolamide or brinzolamide is also advisable for carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, topically as well as parenteral administration of these things. And if it is having a severe case, so in that case you can go for surgery. In surgery, either two techniques are there: either you can decrease the outflow of the aqueous humor production, or you can decrease the production of aqueous humor. So for decreasing the production of aqueous humor, you have to go for either cyclophotocoagulation or cyclodiathermy, in which you have to destroy the ciliary body. Whereas in case of decreased outflow, you have to whenever there is outflow is decreased, so you can place gonio implants, or you can perform peripheral iridectomy or cyclodialysis procedure for management of these cases.
Thank you very much, sir. One more question from Dr. Surbi. He asked about the treatment of anterior synechia.
Suppose if there is a anterior synechia in the animal, first of all, you have to start therapy or treatment with the mydriatics. That is 1% atropine is used to dilate the pupil. If it is not severe synechia, so then it leads to the dilatation of pupil, and over a period of time it may separate the synechia. But if it still remains, then you have to separate or perform iridectomy. For that you have to give a nick over the cornea, and then after forming the anterior chamber, you have to cut this particular iris with the help of a iris scissor.
Thank you, sir. Question from Dr. Muskan. Question is, for pigmentation, which one is best, either cyclosporine or a tacrolimus?
See, I have used both cyclosporine and tacrolimus, but still, in my opinion, I found cyclosporine better than tacrolimus.
Thank you, sir. The last question from my side. What is your suggestion to our field vet for the diagnosis and management of ocular affection in animal? In very brief, sir.
See, whenever I'm asking for a field vet, my suggestion is that never jump over the particular symptom of the condition which is being informed by the owner. Rather than this, you have to go for thorough clinical examination of the eye. And once you completely perform the clinical examination, then you jump over the particular diagnosis. And once you diagnose the case, then a proper management is essential. What we are doing under field, I'm not blaming, but they are just using boric acid powder and this hydrocortisone pendistrine SH tube. So rather than this, we slowly over a period of time, we must learn the particular diagnostic managemental cases. It should be managed in a systemic way.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all the question of our participants. So now at the end of the session, I would like to invite Dr. Deepak Suthar for vote of thanks. Dr. Deepak, please.
You are now muted.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Sivraj Jala. Very nice presentations. First, thanks to all the participants join with us. Without your support, this series is not possible. And once again, I'm heartily thankful to all the participants who joined with us. I'm also thankful to today's speaker and my friends and great ocular surgeons, Dr. S.K. Jala, to accept my invitations. Sir, thank you very much to accept my invitations and give the very nice presentations, really very nice presentations, and preparations very hard, and very nicely deliver these lectures, this webinar series. I'm also thankful to the Dr. Lalit Modi, the co-partner of this series and also co-organizing secretary of this webinar series. Without this support, this series is not possible. So I'm also thankful to Dr. Lalit Modi. I'm also thankful to the higher authority of NIU. So Dr. S.R. Chaudhary sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dean of the Veterinary College, Dr. V.B. Kharadi sirs, RT Director of the Dr. Pandya sirs. So provide the nice digital platform for this webinar series. So once again, I am also thankful to all the participants. So next week we'll meet with the new topic with the new speakers. Till then, namaskar, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Deepak and Dr. Lalit.
Thank you, sir. Very nice
You are now
presentations.
unmuted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now I end the session.